This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
Let's kick this bad boy off. Episode 183, now available for download. You are listening to the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me, my cousin, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. What's up, cuz?
So the Wings season has progressed along here, and I've been watching, you've been watching, and everybody else out there has been watching. And I thought at some point they would have addressed these Jack Demmer commercials. Have you seen these? The girl who looks like she's got a Magnum 55 gigantic Sharpie marker for eyebrows drawn on. Like, they are the worst, and they're like all crooked, and they just look bad. If you've watched any of the Wings games, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They're horrible, bro. Absolutely horrible. Have you not seen these?
No, man. When the commercials come on, I tend to walk around. What I do is I flip through. I always have a backup plan when I watch the Wings because sometimes, as you know, watching a Wings game, you just kind of go, oh my God, another missed pass. On Tuesday, when they had the 5-on-3 versus Columbus, I was this close to being like, 5-on-3, another disaster. They obviously got the goal, which was finally, an opportunity for them to take advantage of a 5-on-3, but when the commercials come, I kind of also like to do, if you have a DVR, is kind of start the game like 15 minutes late and kind of let it go through, so when a commercial comes, you can kind of get through them. So I've never actually seen the commercial that you're talking about.
Oh, dude, now that I bring it up, just wait for it. Next Wings game, all right, wait for it, and check them out, dude. Like, her eyebrows are brutal. Like, I feel bad for her. Like, it's a decently put together commercial, and she's kind of a cute girl, but the eyebrows are so bad. Like, so bad. They're so thick. They're so uneven. And it honestly looks like they're just drawn on. Like just paintbrush. It is so bad. You're going to see it and you're going to die. You're going to take a picture and you're going to tweet it out and you're going to laugh. I know you are. Wait, dude, check them out. It's brutal. Again, like I said, seems like a pretty enough girl. She looks like she'd be nice to talk to maybe. But she needs some help with those eyebrows. In the fact that Jack Demmer hasn't even addressed this or even bothered to fix these, or all you got to do is hire somebody with a little bit of skill with Photoshop, thin them out a little bit, and just kind of straighten them up. That's all you got to do.
Now, in just a few minutes, we're going to talk about the Super Bowl and the commercials and all things that were related to the epic football game that occurred on Sunday. But you saw companies spent $10 million for stuff that you and I go, are you serious? Right now, $10 million. If you and I were going to commit $10 million to anything, we would have everything fine-tuned. We would do focus groups. We would air it to 50 people and say, what do you think, to make sure it's possible? And Darren Rovell tweeted out, the majority of people that voted, I believe like 10,000 people, he asked, did any of the ads that aired on the Super Bowl make you want to go buy their product? No. I go, oh, okay, it was entertaining, it was cute, but I'm not going to want to go buy an Audi car. I'm not going to want to go buy Tide. None of the products made me go, yeah, I'm affiliated with that. So it's just a big, colossal waste of money, or it's just a way to go, okay, hey, my eyeballs now are on your company for this minute and us talking about it today. So I understand completely that the advertising field, the marketing field has a bunch of professionals that really got to do a much better job because, at least for the Super Bowl, I was not impressed. But before we get to all that kind of talk, couple quick hitters. Did you see the new debut show on Comedy Central, Detroiters? It was really good. I DVR'd it, and I sat through and I watched it on Tuesday night. I believe it airs at 10:30. Comedy Central, I haven't seen too much of lately. I know they do a lot of good late-night programming that's entertaining. It's just not on my radar, but I DVR'd Detroiters. It was really funny, man. You get to see the nostalgia watching, scenes take place in Detroit, and I like the physical comedy. I like the relationship that the two guys have, and I like the slapstick kind of humor. So for the pilot episode, the review that I would give it was thumbs up, man. I'm looking forward to seeing more episodes, and I like the dynamic. And real quickly, for those that haven't seen it, it's just about two advertising guys trying to make it, and they kind of go and try to step up above their grade and try to pitch an idea to Chrysler to try and get some more money. But the story is in their relationship and kind of being from Detroit and trying to kind of make an advertising company work when the guy, took it over from his dad. But I give it 2 thumbs up. It was kind of cool to see, and I'm looking forward to future episodes.
I've got it saved to the DVR. Haven't checked it out yet.
It's worth it. You'll laugh.
I've been interested in wanting to see this. It looks really good. It looks really funny. Kind of that slapsticky humor. And the fact that it takes place in and around Detroit made me really, really interested. So I can't wait to watch it.
What do you got on your season pass for your DVR right now? What are you watching regularly every single week, episodically?
So just recently, that whole thing on, I think it was A&E, the whole thing with Leah Remedy and Scientology, I watched that. That was super interesting. Like so interesting that like while it was going on, I was on the computer like Googling a whole bunch of stuff and just learning about all kinds of stuff with Scientology. What else do I have on there? I've got Detroiters. That's brand new on there. Of course, I've got TNA Wrestling because I watch all things wrestling, ROH Wrestling, of course, WWE, SmackDown, and Raw. Channel 7 Sports Cave, that's on there. I think that's, of course, NCIS Los Angeles, and NCIS.
That stuff is still going on.
Dude, I love NCIS. It's so good. NCIS is, that's like me and the wife's show. So, like, I'll force her to watch wrestling. She says I force her to watch it. She's really into it. She's the only person I know who sits there and pops and does the whoo when New Day comes out. So whatever. We'll watch wrestling, and then like on a Thursday or whatever, we'll watch NCIS, and then I watch TNA Wrestling like Friday, Saturday afternoon, ROH on like a Monday afternoon when I have my own time when she's not around. So because she doesn't want to watch those, she refers to those as bad wrestling. WWE is apparently good wrestling.
Gotcha. Now, the other tidbit that I kind of sent you earlier today before we recorded this podcast, a lot of people were abuzz regarding this Royal Oak resident who won $1 million supposedly on this app called FourPlay, I believe. And it's one of those things where...
4chan? No? FourPlay. Okay.
I believe so. We'll look at it right here. But the storyline is this. A lot of people blew it up, and he was on WXYZ, DetroitNews.com. People were talking about it, saying that, hey, this guy won $1 million by ridiculously going a long period of time by picking 4 games a week against the spread. And he was able to win the $1 million by picking the Patriots to win the Super Bowl. But once it kind of came out, once the publicity happened, more and more people, once the story came out, including Barstool Sports, USA Today, have also added to the story, kind of saying, wait a minute here, there's a lot of skepticism. So I ran a poll on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, and the way I came across it was the Drew and Mike podcast interviewed Dominic Marabella, a financial advisor in Royal Oak, and under it, you know how people subtweet and they comment, 4 or 5 people under the post that kind of advertised the appearance had said, scam, no way, this story's false. And I'm like, wait a minute, what do you mean false? Was he part of the company? Was there something going on that made it skeptical? And then when you read up on it a little bit more, when you start to dig behind, you go, wait a minute, there's only a couple hundred followers to this site. The individual, it's a Michigan-based company, this app, and the person that won is affiliated in some way with the owner of the company, whether it be an associate, they're in the same business. So a lot of people's BS alert has gone up and going, wait a minute, prove it. This is a new company. Are you trying to get advertising? Are you trying to go about your business in a shady kind of way? So when I sent it to you, did your BS alert go off?
A little bit. I'm on the website right now. It's a very professional
What's
looking
it called?
website. It's fourplayfootball.com. All right. A very professional looking website, laid out really nice, easy to kind of navigate and get around. And as I read through the story, there are just too many coincidences that seem almost too good to be true here, you know?
80% of our followers on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, they flat out believe it's a scam.
Yeah, it really sounds like it. And the fact that the gentleman who was in the running to win the $1 million or the supposed $1 million, and the guy who sits there and runs the site, they have too many. There's too many times where their paths have crossed for them to either A, not know each other, or B, this to just be a coincidence. Like, oh, hey, I signed up and I'm gonna win. It really seems like this guy winning. This is the very first time this site was put up. It's the very first year that this whole thing's going on. And this guy to sit there and have the odds of hitting the $1 million throughout the entire season. This wasn't just a 1-week thing. This was, you had to pick games from the beginning of the season all the way to the Super Bowl. And there's a little bit of a 14-point tease, a 10-point tease, and then you had to basically nail the Super Bowl. But it's just too improbable, way too improbable. Just strikes me as very odd.
I guess you would get publicity nationwide. I mean, you're talked about in USA Today. the Detroit News, WXYZ, all went out and interviewed the guy. I tried to reach out to him, called his workplace, but no response back. So why would he call the Detroit Sports Podcast? But I wasn't actually, at that point in time, I just wanted to talk to him about the story. I hadn't heard yet that people were skeptical about it, but maybe we got lucky and diverted a situation where people would call us out for putting on somebody that potentially, allegedly, could be scamming. But it's one of those things where I don't know why a company like this would actually have to go out and even attempt to have a contest like this for people to sign up. I mean, if this company uses this slogan or this contest and says, hey, you got to pick 4 teams against the spread every week, you have to hit a 14 parlay every week from now, the beginning of the year to the end of the year, including the Super Bowl, that's not going to make me sign up. I haven't heard of this company. They never came across my radar. I mean, it came across my radar towards the end where he was getting closer and things like that. But in terms of advertising, why expose yourself if you're a new company to $1 million hit, especially, the very basic level is nobody believes that this guy actually did it, that he picked all these games correctly, especially, I guess the burden of proof goes on the site to show like, okay, show me the picks. And there was, if you read, a little inkling where he got 1 week late, but they kind of randomly adjusted it for him or allowed him to kind of put in the picks a little bit later than usual. So there was a little bit of like a leeway in terms of allowing him to pick 4 games, but I am a little bit skeptical that he was able to pick a 14 parlay throughout the entire year.
Season, yeah.
So it's one of those things where I don't like to feel like I'm scammed, and I don't like to feel like that a story that was put out there is not to be true. But if you are a winner of this, how do you go about proving it? Do you like have your sheet of picks, or how do you go about proving that you're not a liar or a scammer?
Well, look at it this way too. We're talking about it. I think we're one of the better podcasts out there, and I think we're pretty good at what we do, and we're pretty entertaining, and we bring a lot of different things to the table, but we're just a podcast, and we're talking about this. So I guess this would fall underneath the publicity, like no publicity is bad publicity, So we're discussing it. Other people are discussing it. The name is now out there. Now, this was the first year. See what the second year turns in, And if you get something good going with that, maybe you have a better year with the third year. So maybe it gets the ball rolling, and this is just one of those things I guess we're kind of shining a light on it. It's not really the most positive light because we're like, hey, something seems fishy here. But again, shining a light on this website, and we're talking about it. So maybe that's what they're going for.
Are you inclined next year to potentially sign up and give it a whirl? You're not going to pick 4 teams every week? It's free, right? It's free, I think, right?
Well, that's what it sounds like, but no. Look, man, I probably have to divulge way too much information, and I'm a conspiracy theorist, and I'm a total loony bin. So, no, I'm not jumping on one of these sites, and I'm not going to sit there and take the time out of my day to sit there and try to figure this out. Here's the thing. I got a degenerate for a father, right? My father calls me. He's like, well, who should I pick? What should I do? Because he's always in the hole. Always looking to sit there and hit big. So I got my dad to take care of. I'm not trying to sit there and put it on this website and whatever happens. It's not happening.
So $1 million question. Did you tell him to take Tom Brady and bet the house on Brady?
I told him to take the Patriots. I did.
Oh, so I'm sure did he send you any kind of message up until the third quarter like, damn it, son, what did you do here?
No, I didn't talk to him at all during the day of the Super Bowl. Okay. I had my mom's birthday. So we had birthday / Super Bowl party, and I was so busy running around doing squares and doing a 50-50 raffle for the Super Bowl. I was really, really tied up with everything.
Now with the square, did you specify that you pay first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, final score? Or do you have to kind of have a complicated factor where some people's squares got jacked up because of the fact it was the first game that ever went to overtime? Did you have to pay out 5 or 4, or did you specify and do it correctly?
So I didn't specify. I always figured it was the unwritten rule. Like, if it goes to overtime, you just pay out the final. You don't pay out the fourth quarter in this case. And I guess there's been a lot of confusion and a lot of issues with that for a lot of different people.
You got to specify.
But see, like, I don't know. The way I was, even my mom was like, so do we pay the fourth quarter or do we pay the final? I was like, you pay the final. Like, no, like this. I don't even know why this is a question. I've never understood why you would pay the fourth quarter. You always pay the final. That's how I was always raised. It's what I always thought. I never believed that there was an issue with it. So the fact that, Monday rolls around and you're hearing all these stories of all these people who had issues with their squares, I'm like, duh, you just pay the final. Like, what kind of degenerates don't know that you just pay the final? I don't know. I thought it was just an unwritten rule.
Well, now, because a game has gone to overtime, you're going to have to just specify, should
now
the
on,
game
yes.
go to overtime, we're not paying the square at the end of the fourth quarter. We're only paying the final.
Yep.
Because when it involves money, people do get a sense of feeling cheated. And you know, in this country, everyone does big squares too. So if you're sitting on $1,000 and you're like, oh, the fourth quarter hits and you got the square and you don't get no money, you do feel a little sense of like, you feel a sense of being cheated or lost.
For sure.
But if you get specified,
I understand that, but again, I don't know, man. It's.
I think with you now,
It never dawned on me to pay the fourth quarter if there's a tie. You know, I just apparently, I don't know. Maybe I was raised a little bit different. Maybe I've been in the game a little bit too long. Maybe I just see it a little bit different. I was always under the assumption that you just pay the final on it. It never even dawned on me to sit there and pay the fourth quarter. Like I said, my mom sat there and she asked, she's like, "Are you paying the fourth quarter? Or are you paying the final?" And I looked at her and I'm like, "Why are you even asking this? Like, it's the final. Like, duh. Like, why?"
I can
what
tell
would
you
make
why.
you think that?
I can tell you why. Even when we do simple contests just to give away $5 and $10 gift cards, people will start acting like, there's specific rules here. Like, I sent it this way or that way. Like, we have to give out a guideline about a Twitter contest from our
find a
podcast.
loophole.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what will solve all your problems is whenever you do a contest, you have to think through scenarios and you have to think, okay, are there possible scenarios where somebody could win or it goes to a tie, and you have to specify, should the game go into overtime, you will not pay out the fourth quarter. People just want to know in advance. And when you do a contest, especially for money, when you're putting up $25-$50 a square and you're trying to give out at least $500 to $600, people want to know exactly what the rules are. And now in case of an overtime, you have to put in the square that we will not pay out the fourth quarter.
Yeah, that's one of those things that now
You got any
going
squares?
forward. No, I didn't hit any. My sister hit a square.
Nice.
Her boyfriend or whatever he is, he hit a square. Who else hit a square? My stepdad hit a square, and I paid somebody else out. Who else hit a square?
Was the individual who
I
got
don't remember.
Was the individual who got affected by the missed extra point in the house going, oh my gosh, I would have hit the square?
Yes.
He was there?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, he felt the pain.
Yep. And I think that was first quarter. My sister won that one. So yeah, because of the missed extra point, my sister ended up winning the square.
That was the one that was most obvious, was like, oh, here you go. And then
My brother, that's who won the other square. My brother won the other square. This was like my first Super Bowl too, with like an active child in the house. Like, my nephew was running all around and wanted to do nothing but play. He was, by the time the fourth quarter rolled around, he was a little bit tuckered out, so I got lucky and I got to basically see the end. But for the first three quarters, I was under a ton of stress by trying to run squares, trying to run a 50-50 raffle, and having a 4-year-old run around and just want to hang out with me and just play. So that was trying. Did you end up going out? Because I remember we talked about it, and you said that you were probably going to end up staying home, but you had the wife and you had the kids, so you weren't sure if you wanted to do that. What'd you end up doing?
Yep, stayed home. It was amazing up until the game. So my scenario was simple. I had an opportunity to, go out. I was invited to go out, and I said, you know what? I just want to stay at home and enjoy the day. So the way I did it was I had a function for the kid in the morning up until 11 o'clock. So we did the church religious thing, came back home and got the spread laid out. My wife made some nachos. She made some dips. She made some hot dogs wrapped in the bun. She made all the good foods before the game. So ordered some pizza. So we ate a lot before the game, had a little fun with the kids, watched a lot of the pregame on NFL Network. They just do a great job with games, the chemistry with all the Hall of Famers. I just love, for me, I'm a guy that's affiliated with the NFL Network, and I like watching them exclusively. No, I haven't watched ESPN's pregame, Fox, CBS in well over 5 years. Locked in, 154 on the dish, I watch NFL Network. But then when the game hit, it got a little bit trying because I kind of wanted some peace and quiet and the same thing. And I got 2 young daughters, and they wanted to dance. They wanted to, watch cartoons. So it was a little bit hectic at that point. But all in all, it was a great experience. And I told my wife, I'm like, wow, I had a lot of fun. And the difference would be if I ever build a man cave in the basement, what I'll do is I'll spend the day with the kids, mix in some pregame, and then go downstairs to the man cave and watch it by myself because it was great. I got to tweet, got to watch everything, got to get in it, got to have a good old time. I was really into the Super Bowl. And for me, it took me till mid-Monday to come down emotionally from the game because I was so into it. I was really rooting for the Falcons. I was like, this is a perfect game plan. You punch the team in the mouth. You go out there and take the title. But the factor that I guess most people didn't kind of consider, and one now that I know I'll add to my analysis, is the choke factor. The hardest thing to do in any situation professionally in a sporting environment is to go out there and finish the job. You saw what happened. The game sped up. Once it was time to, make the key plays, the Atlanta Falcons had the drive. They had the title right there and they choked. So in 4 days, have you kind of changed your opinion and move away from that awful narrative that you felt like the Patriots made adjustments and it wasn't all the Falcons who blew it because they were right there? And it was obvious. As it was going on, I'm like, okay, it was right there. Julio Jones makes the amazing catch. I'm like, perfect. They responded. They took the punch. The Falcons were able to weather the storm. They were able to see what the New England Patriots were able to do. Come back. It was 28-20. They start off the great play with Freeman. He gets 20 yards, get him closer to field goal range. Then the amazing pass, which I hope Julio Jones gets credit for in the future. I hope it doesn't just fade into oblivion. That was an amazing catch. Catch the ball, 2 feet down, you're on the 20-yard line. And I tweeted out, run, 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 it's done. Many people have even come out and said, hey, if you wanted to be silly about it, just take a kneel down. Do the Falcons do that? No. And I'm going to give you a poker analogy to kind of help, tell my story in that I agree with you in what you said. You said that, hey, the Falcons have gotten this far by being aggressive. But at that point in time, with 4 minutes left, you're on the 20-yard line, up by 8. The idea would have been downshift, slow it down, take the knees, don't take any chances. Hopefully kick the field goal, execute, go up by 11, and many people wouldn't think that. Up 11 with 3 minutes left, if the clock went down, nobody would have thought that New England was going to come back. So in my mind, the way I wrap it up was the Falcons choked.
It's a great narrative, but you're wrong. All right, the Patriots are one of the greatest teams ever, and this Super Bowl goes on to prove it. Look, you have a quarterback who excels the most when the deck is stacked against him, especially in the 2-minute drill. He was ice cold and lights out in that 2-minute drill to win that game, or to get that game to a tie to sit there and push it into overtime. You have to realize, down 28-3 with 8:31 left in the third quarter. At the very best, you need 3 touchdowns, you need at least 1 2-point conversion, and you need a field goal to sit there and just to be able to tie the game so you can then go to overtime with a chance to win it. And this team was able to sit there and accomplish all of that and then some. On top of it, you've got one of the best head coaches ever with Bill Belichick, who, I don't know if he just Jedi mind tricks other coaches during Super Bowls. I mean, if you go back to, 2 years ago with the Seahawks game, you have Marshawn Lynch, right? You've got beast mode. You got Captain Skittle himself. Hand him the ball, let him run it in. No, instead, Russell Wilson drops back to pass. It's picked off at the goal line, and look who goes on to win. The Pats do. This game right here, you're talking about running the ball, being a little bit more conservative. Like you said, downshift a little bit. You don't have to sit there and you don't have to keep playing lights out and balls to the wall with the aggression, but downshift a little bit. Maybe start running it a little bit more, be a little bit more time conscious. You start using the entire play clock instead of portions of the play clock to really sit there and milk the clock down. Instead, Atlanta keeps the metal to the pedal and keeps their foot on the gas. And in the end, it might have came back and bit them in the butt. But I think this is more kind of points to just the Patriots being a complete team, because it wasn't just Tom Brady helping them win the game by being ice cold in the 2-minute drill. It wasn't just having one of the best head coaches of all time. You also have one of the most efficient defenses ever. I mean, they've only given up 30-plus points one time this entire season, and that was Week 10 against Seattle, and they only gave up 31 points. On top of it, they made timely stops when they had to. They forced turnovers when the opportunity presented themselves, and really and truly, if you look at it, Atlanta really shot themselves in the foot with that holding penalty, which took them out of field goal range late in that fourth quarter. So it was really Atlanta doing it to themselves. I don't necessarily think they choked. I just think that the way the Patriots were playing, they play their best when their back's against the wall. And Atlanta started to feel that pressure because it really seemed like the Patriots got on a little bit of a roll. Momentum started to switch, and they really just kind of forced the issue. And Atlanta just didn't know how to handle it. I mean, look, I thought this was a great Super Bowl. Atlanta came out that first half, and they really dominated play, controlled everything. And you're sitting there and you're scratching your head going into halftime like, what the heck's going on with these Patriots, you know? If you're
this is bad.
Yes, it was. If you're a New England fan, you know that they're a better second half team. So you're like, okay, well, Belichick's going to make some adjustments, going to come out. It's going to be a little bit of a different game. And really up until that middle point of the third quarter, it was a lot of the same old same from that first half. Atlanta was in control. They were driving. They looked like they sat there and they had complete and utter possession of that entire game.
They extended the lead to 28-3 in the third quarter.
In New England comes out and kicks an onside kick. I mean, you can see that at that point they were kind of feeling it, and they were just trying to make something positive happen. And they end up sticking to the game plan after they botch the onside kick. And next thing you know, they get rolling. They get a little momentum. And Tom Brady starts firing on all cylinders. And you're sitting there, you're picking up touchdowns, you're picking up 2-point conversions. And in the end, they were able to push it to an overtime. And at that point, I think everybody knew just if they win the coin flip, this game is probably over because they just had momentum going their entire way.
You know what a team needs to do to think outside the box? If I ever got a chance to be a head coach, you know what I would do? I'd have 2 coordinators at each position. I'd have the guy that primarily calls the plays on offense and defense, and then I'd have a backup person situationally to tell me, hey, offensively, do we go aggressive or passively here? Now, the game didn't turn on the drive where they had the second down and the third down that went backwards. The game turned on a 3rd and 1 play where you call a passing play and it's a strip sack. That play should have never been called either. And so many people are looking at, Dan Quinn to be at fault, Kyle Shanahan in terms of the play call. Atlanta ran the ball only 4 times in the second half. And when you look at it, you go, no, no, no. Statistically, many people are pointing out about halfway through the third quarter, they were 99.7% likely to win the game. All they had to do, and it was pretty much a scenario where it almost would have made it impossible for New England to come back if you were just to call a running play on every single play in the second half. And what the Falcons were not able to do and why it's a choke was they were not able to finish the job. They had done everything like we talked about. And if you listen to the podcast before the Super Bowl, we were in the ballpark of talking about what needed to be done. You needed to force turnovers. You needed to punch Tom Brady in the mouth. And they were able to do that in the first half and execute it very well. Now, New England's going to come back, and that's why I don't say, hey, they made adjustments. I expected them to be in the game. It would have been a major shock and an upset had it gone on to finish out and Atlanta was going to win like 31-3. That would have been a major upset and a major surprise. Everyone expected, and like most games, there are runs. You expected New England was going to make a run. They have the best coach. They have the best quarterback. And that's why that singular drive, so many people who are debating it will say, yeah, it takes a little bit of both. It takes New England to come back, and it takes Atlanta choking. But I go, if you just focus on that one drive where Atlanta gets the ball, the first play is a great call, and they expose New England's defense. You move the ball with Freeman, and he runs it 20, 25 yards, gets closer to field goal range, and then you have that epic pass to Julio Jones. Right then and there, if you just focus on that one possession, you weathered the storm. You did the job, okay? All you have to do is have somebody whisper in Dan Quinn's ear, run, 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 clock, 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 force New England to call timeouts. That's the choke right there. And that on second down, after you call the run play, you lose a yard. It's 2nd and 11. Why on earth is he taking a 7-step drop? I stopped it and I said, look, honey, he's 10 yards back in the line of scrimmage before the ball. I mean, what is that I'm talking about? He's 10 yards back behind the line of scrimmage on a 2nd and 11. And he gets sacked. You cannot have that happen. You could pinpoint it on Matt Ryan and say, hey, under no circumstances do you get sacked. But if I'm Matt Ryan, I overrule the coach and I take all the blame. He calls run left, he calls whatever he calls. I'm calling kneel down. And I go, wait a minute, situationally, what the hell are they calling? Hey, they were thinking in hindsight, if I call a pass play and we score a touchdown, now we punched it in the mouth and we stay aggressive. But New England was able to adjust and they were able to make the plays on 2nd and 3rd down. But everyone looking in hindsight will say that call, in my opinion, ranks way higher. The 2nd and 3rd down calls in Super Bowl 51 are more egregious than the non-running call that Seattle made. And Dan Quinn's part of both. Dan Quinn is affiliated with both. He was on Seattle. I mean, he doesn't call the plays, but he's there. He should have learned. He should have saw that, whoa, we needed to do something more efficient. He was there at the Super Bowl where he saw his coach call a pass play instead of a run play. You don't think that should have absorbed in his brain and had him like twitching at the sideline, run, run, run? They should have ran the football. They were not able to. And what happened was the game sped up. They saw the momentum and they knew that New England was going to come back, and they were not able to make the plays late. And it's a choke. It's one of those things where they're right there. They make 2 calls differently, run the clock down, kick the field goal. It's a totally different game. And my assessment is it's a good game. It's a good second half. First half,
I thought it was a great second half.
It was a great second half, but the first half, it was one-sided.
But you needed the first half to set up that second half, because if you don't have Atlanta sitting there in the driver's seat controlling everything, I mean, New England couldn't get out of their own way. Tom Brady was throwing interceptions. The team seemed to stutter and stall out on every drive they had. You end up scoring a touchdown, and then you miss the extra point. I mean, that's how bad things were going for New England at a certain point. You needed that first half, and you needed that first half of the third quarter to really set up that great second half and really get completed with that overtime. Now, I think maybe a bigger issue that I don't know if you want to talk about, I don't really have an issue with it. It's the way the game is played. It's the way the rules are set up. It is the overtime. Do you feel both teams need to have a possession in overtime? I mean, you basically win the coin flip. You've got like a 90% chance that you're going to win the game. My thought process is, you know what? If you're meant to win that game and you get there, your defense should be good enough to come up with a stop. New England was like a hot knife through butter on that last drive to win the game, and they just drove right down the field and punched Atlanta in the throat.
Another reason why you run the football for the Atlanta Falcons was New England ran damn near 93 offensive plays. So you gassed out your defense. It wasn't like they didn't have the talent. You saw situations where in the first half they were able to pin their ears back and crunch Tom Brady, force a pick six. But by the time 93 offensive plays happened, many people have said, and they felt like whoever won the coin toss most likely was going to go down the field and score a touchdown. But that's the name of the game. I like it as is because you're forcing your defense, who are also getting paid big money to do a job. Your job is to stop them. If New England doesn't score a touchdown, Atlanta gets a chance to get the ball. So I'm a big fan of the overtime, and it's just one of those things where if Atlanta wanted to really have a chance, stop New England from scoring a touchdown, it's a non-issue, and it shouldn't be used as an excuse because in the end, it's a culmination of New England being able to punish Atlanta's defense by running so many plays. And sometimes you have to run plays for your defense. You can't let your defense get gassed out like that. And that's why many people are faulting Dan Quinn as being very faulty and taking, and putting the ultimate blame on him is that sometimes you have to overrule your offensive coordinator and say, hey, my defense has been out here damn near 80 plays. We got to slow it down. Call 3 running plays. Sometimes you take clock, you allow them to rest, and maybe had Atlanta run more in the second half instead of only 4 times. Then when overtime hits, hey, maybe they have an opportunity to kind of run some plays and stop New England's offense. So it's one of those things where Atlanta is singularly to blame. I don't believe New England won it. Atlanta lost it 100% in my mind. And for me, the Super Bowl 2 years ago, the Seattle-New England Super Bowl was a little bit better in my mind in the last 5 years of the games that I've watched. This one ranks second. That game was dramatic all the way up until the end. It was 2 teams matching wits, and that last call really sparked a lot of debate. So for me, in the last 5 years, Super Bowl 51 was ranked second, and 49 ranks first. That Super Bowl with Seattle, go back and watch it. It was a really good game.
And the one common denominator in both those games was Tom Brady.
And Dan Quinn.
And I think now you can kind of sit there and you can point and you can make the argument, and I believe he is the greatest of all time. That being said, he's the only quarterback with 5 Super Bowl championships. He's the second player to ever do that. He's the only player to ever do that with the same exact team.
Wait, specify, you said he's the only quarterback with 5.
Yes.
And him and Charles Haley, I believe, as players have 5.
Yes. And Charles Haley had to do it with 2 different teams. Did it with San Francisco, and then he had to go jump on the Dallas bandwagon to sit there and get his 5th. Now, if you look at the last 2 Super Bowls that he was involved in, headed into the 4th quarter, his team was down a combined 29 points. And he was able to sit there and will his team and bring them back to win both those Super Bowls. If you look at it, he hasn't done it with any great shakes of any players. If you look at all of his championships that he's won, he's basically done it with kind of the land of misfit toys, cast-offs, just odds and end pieces. I mean, it's just been a revolving cast of characters. I mean, Gronk is probably his best player that he has on his team, and Gronk had no contributions to this Super Bowl. Gronk was hurt the majority of this year, didn't contribute at all to what this team did. Gronk may be a cap casualty because of the way Belichick runs his program and the way Belichick does things. If you really look at the guys that surrounded Tom Brady, it's just kind of guys that Bill Belichick picks up off the scrap heap and creates roles for. I mean, look at his best wide receiver, Julian Edelman. Do you realize Julian Edelman was a quarterback for Toledo who was turned into a defensive back and a special teams player who then became a wide receiver? It's just inane, the way that Bill Belichick and Tom Brady are able to sit there and just kind of take guys and turn them into Pro Bowl players.
Now, I got a feeling I may know where you shake out on this question, and this is one that's naturally evolved from this conversation from what people have watched now the last 15 years. Is the New England Patriots' success largely due to Tom Brady or more largely due to Bill Belichick and the system that he's run? And I think what you're going to say.
I do.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I think they're linked.
Not the link. Who's more responsible?
I think you have to have both. Because Tom Brady fell into a great spot where he got a coach who totally understood what he could give him.
Does Tom Brady win 5 with Seattle or with Miami or with another team? Does he win 5 Super Bowls outside of New England and what Bill Belichick has been able to do with the revolving players? Not 5, in my opinion. I believe that Bill Belichick deserves a little bit more credit. In the neighborhood of 55%, it's due to Bill Belichick. 45% goes to Tom Brady.
This is the one thing you can say, though. Bill Belichick wasn't successful until he got Tom Brady. He didn't start winning Super Bowls until he had Tom Brady at the helm. You can't say that about Tom Brady because you've never seen Tom Brady without Bill Belichick. So Tom Brady may be more important than Bill Belichick, but I think there's some give and take here because you've got a quarterback who has a coach who totally understands what he brings to the table, and he puts players around him that will excel and succeed based upon what he does well, not what he does poorly or where he may falter, but he puts guys around him that Tom Brady can accentuate their talents. And I think that's kind of the mind meld here and why this becomes such a difficult question, because it's the chicken or the egg, right? What came first? Is Tom Brady the best quarterback of all time? I think so. I think he does things. And I mean, in this Super Bowl alone, the guy completed almost 70% of his passes, and he willed his team to a victory. On top of that, you've got probably one of the greatest coaches of all time. I mean, Bill Belichick has 5 Super Bowl championships. No other head coach has ever done that. So, it's a very difficult question. I think because we've seen Bill Belichick not be successful without a quarterback of Tom Brady's caliber and ilk, Tom Brady is probably more important than Bill Belichick is to the Belichick-Brady combo meal. But I think you need to have both for them both to be as successful as they are. That being said, I think Tom Brady could sit there and go and play for a team like a Seattle with a Pete Carroll, or he could go play for, I don't know, any other coach who is worth a damn. Probably not Jim Caldwell. But could go play for any coach who's worth a damn and could win, 2-3 Super Bowls and be right up there and be in the conversation of the greatest of all time or the best quarterback of his generation. Being with Belichick, I think, accentuates everything that he has done. And he is now put in the caliber of greatest of all time, better than a guy like a Joe Montana, who, for the longest time, my favorite quarterback and the one guy who I held up as the gold standard. I thought Joe Montana was the gold standard. I thought he was the best quarterback ever. Just the way he was able to command the offense and the way he was able to run the offense. That being said, I think Tom Brady now supersedes him because he has won his 5th championship. He has done it with a revolving cast of characters. He has sat there and willed his team back in the last 2 Super Bowls to sit there and win them when basically the game was all but out of his control. So I think Tom Brady's a little bit more important to answer your question.
See, I'm a fan of Bill Belichick, and I understand the point that you made, the great point that you made regarding the ultimate success. But what's happened in the year when Tom Brady tore his ACL up?
They were 11-5, and Matt Castle led them to an 11-5 record. They were second, and they missed the playoffs.
They missed the playoffs. See, 11 wins without Tom Brady, and then this year,
but no postseason success.
No postseason success, and then this year without Tom Brady, they go 3-1. So many people believe that. Well, okay. See, now
but
what we need
is shut out by Buffalo, and Buffalo's an absolute dumpster fire.
See, now what we need Tom Brady to kind of step aside and retire so we can see what Bill Belichick can do, if Garoppolo can be the guy, or if he finds success, so we can actually have an answer to this question. But many people believe this marriage is going to go on, and many people believe that once Brady steps aside, if I'm Belichick, I step aside too.
I was going to say, do you see one retiring and then one retiring right after?
Together. It's a combo deal.
I think so.
And I think it's a great debatable point because New England has a great system. Many people feel like now at this point, when you see a Kyle Van Noy go there, you see the Misfits go there and they have some success. But you also got to realize too, there was a 10-year gap. They won 5 Super Bowls, but they didn't win one. They didn't win one in 10 years in 2014. The last one they won was 2004. So they win one in 2004. 10 years goes by until they win again in 2014 and then again now in 2016. But the reason why people have such, lore and respect for New England was they got to the title games. They lost 2 Super Bowls. They were constantly in the postseason, giving them chances. So that's the gold standard organization, and it's just for us geekniks to debate who's better and things like that. But it's an interesting question. Would Tom Brady have cheated with some other organization? Would Bill Belichick have been willing to, have a Spygate with another organization, maybe without the cachet of a New England Patriot? But for me, I don't care about all the haters who talk about Tom Brady and say, oh, he's a cheater, or the ones that say Bill Belichick and the Patriots are cheaters, because in essence, many people have come out and said, hey, Aaron Rodgers said it, others have said it, the great Jerry Rice used a little bit of stickums on his hands. Many people take advantages competitively, and many people do things, and I can't hate on it because I probably would do it too. I'm not going to sit here and lie. If I was a competitor, if I'm Tom Brady, and I have an avenue of saying I want my balls this way, I'd do the same thing. So I don't think that Deflategate, Spygate, PJ Gate, whatever gate you want to assign to this affects Tom Brady at all. He's a hard worker. I do believe that had he not been drafted in the 6th round, you don't get this. He uses any avenue to motivate himself better than any athlete in the history. And I agree with you. He is and he's put himself in the conversation to be the best quarterback of all time. And he's still got more time to add to that legacy. And this is a guy that when he turns it on, you saw what happened in the Super Bowl, was able to pinpoint. When you watch the NFL Network and you see the film of some throws that he made when he was under pressure, pinpoint accuracy within a yard of having disaster right there to his receivers. And then you go, you know what? When you have an opportunity to prepare, then good things happen. That Edelman catch happens because of the fact that Tom Brady prepares, and they've done a lot of great things. He puts his players in positions to win, and they would go through a wall for him. So Julian Edelman makes that play, and karma kind of came back to him and said, hey, maybe karma screwed him with those 2 catches, that the Giants were able to pull off, and hey, now you get one back in terms of, hey, you got suspended, you got screwed, hey, the football gods will give you one back with a miraculous catch. And Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, great all-time. Don't be a hater. Listen, I'm a state guy, and I say, wow, Tom Brady manages a game well. He prepares. He's mastered the quarterback position. I don't sit here and hate because he's a cheater. Of course he's a cheater. He's not going to admit it, but of course he cheats. But so does Aaron Rodgers. So does Matthew Stafford. They all do it. It's just, to what degree do they get caught? Everybody would do it. So I don't even call it anything worth even talking about. I think he'll have all the respect. He'll get into the Hall of Fame. There'll be no problems. Don't hate on Tom Brady. The dude is amazing.
I don't think there'll be any tarnish to his legacy for anything that has
people do hate on him though.
Occurred in the past.
Look what Rob Parker said. Luckiest of all time, cheater.
I know, but I think those people are narrow-sighted and they don't really realize what greatness they're seeing in front of them. I mean, look, on Wednesday afternoon, the great Tony Dungy, right? A man of morals, of beliefs, good God-fearing man, right? I mean, I don't think anybody has ever said anything negative about Tony Dungy, ever. He's one of the best guys in all of the NFL, right? He's come out and he said, yeah, we cheated. We stole signs. We
did. Yeah.
We did all this because you're trying to win games. So
you know who doesn't cheat? Jim Caldwell doesn't cheat. He's got the moral high ground.
Right. So, I mean, you got guys like Tony Dungy coming out saying, yeah, any advantage you can get, you're going to take it. And if you don't take it, you're stupid. You're absolutely stupid. Look, and as far as Deflategate goes, and this has been, we've hashed this and we've rehashed this and we've talked about this. There is a physics explanation for what happened with it being cold and the balls losing some of their PSI. Do I think Tom Brady maybe likes his footballs a little bit underdeflated? Probably, because you can grip them better. But that being said, I think a lot of other quarterbacks like their footballs like that as well. It just so happened that, I think 2 out of the 5 or 3 out of the 5 were maybe just a little bit more out of range than anything else. I think this turned into a huge deal, more or less because Tom Brady got rid of a cell phone and deleted text messages that Roger Goodell wanted. And this was Roger Goodell's way of trying to save face because Roger Goodell's a total boob. He's an idiot, and he's an awful commissioner.
Did you see the photo with Goodell and Brady?
Oh, yeah, with the middle finger?
Yeah. I don't know.
I love Tom Brady.
It's a way.
I love Tom Brady.
It's a unique way of holding the football. I didn't think he'd do it.
I love Tom Brady.
That was a little bit of shady McShady over there?
I think that's Tom Brady.
That's awesome.
I think that's Tom Brady being a classy guy and getting his jabs in where he can get his jabs in.
You know what's not classy? How the hell do you play a football game, win the Super Bowl, get to the locker room, and have your gear stolen? How does that happen in this day and age?
Jerseys and footballs, I have no idea. And this has just escalated and escalated and escalated. And, if somebody took it to trying to do, a nice thing for James White and for Tom Brady where, hey, I'm going to go get your jersey frame for you, or I'm going to get your football frame for you, I'm going to get it encased for you, this, that, and the other thing. If you're this person who maybe went ahead and did that, because you can't turn around and sell this to anybody. I mean, they're going to know, right? If you went ahead and you did this, has this now spiraled so far out of control that you are almost afraid to give them their gifts for them? Like you went ahead and you did all this work for them, and now you're afraid to give it to them because you might be labeled a thief?
No. Whoever did this did it with bad intentions. They want to have memorabilia.
I agree.
And I realize this. People are saying you're not going to get max value for it. Listen, if you're hungry and you would take $75,000, you would probably do that too. If you're hungry, you got to realize when people are hungry and they're starving or maybe they have a situation where they got to steal something, they'll do it for whatever. So they're not looking about max value. They're not looking to go publicly with it. If they're going to sell it, it's either two scenarios. The person that has it is going to keep it framed.
I like how this person who ever took it is Charmaine, who is hanging out on the street corner with no sweatshirt and no socks on and no shoes. Like all of a sudden they become a homeless person. What? There was nobody allowed in the locker room except for players and authorized personnel. No, this was done before the media could even get in there. So I don't think it was a media member.
Inside job.
Yes. It sounds like it was an inside job, like whether it be an equipment person, a team, official, or whether it be a coach. This was an inside job.
What I'm saying is, though, let's say, for example, you got a mortgage to pay and you're struggling.
Oh, my gosh.
These equipment guys are making $30,000 a year. You get a chance to make $80,000. You put 2 kids through college. But for me, I don't believe it's one of those things where somebody's looking to make a big-time profit off of it. It's either one of two scenarios. It's either a guy that just wants to say, hey, I got this jersey, or two, they're looking to make a quick buck, and they'll try their best to sell it on the underground market for, somewhere in the neighborhood of, close to 100 G's. And that's just the way it is, but it cannot happen. You're going to see now people look to, secure that jersey, give it away on the podium, or give it to somebody that is secured, no doubt about it.
Let me ask you this. So if that jersey is estimated, I don't know, we'll say $1.5 million, right? And you've got it and you took it, you're looking to sell it, and somebody offers you $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, well less than what it's actually been valued at. Do you take it?
Oh yeah, no doubt about it.
I would too. In a heartbeat. Because I'll tell you this much, man. One in the hand is worth more than two in the bush.
You know what you could do if you get the money, too? Tom Brady in March, April, May, I read, is going to do a private signing at a store. I think you can get something signed for $300 or an inscription for $1,000.
How awesome would it be to steal his jersey, buy it, and then turn around and have him sign it? Oh, my God.
Or just buy or sell it.
The balls.
Yeah,
balls.
Or steal it, buy another jersey and just get, pay for the private signing. So it's just one of those things that cannot happen. And I'm utterly shocked that after 4 days, when this podcast comes out, there hasn't been video of somebody in slow motion just taking it off the shelf with all of the TMZ's in there. TMZ is in the locker room. How the hell does TMZ get in the Super Bowl locker room? That gives us hope a little bit. Maybe we can get in the locker room. If TMZ can make it, they're a smut rag,
True.
They're in the locker room. They got the premiere video. That's unbelievable. I was like, TMZ, how on earth did they get into the locker room? But it's one of those things where, it cannot happen. And, to end this topic, because you know what, I'm getting riled up again. I cannot believe Atlanta lost the football game.
The emotions run so hot over there.
Yeah, but it's a topic that everybody's been talking about because I now know where I stand. It was cemented. If the Lions get to the Super Bowl and it plays out like how it played out for the Falcons, I would never want them to get there. Because Vito had asked me, would you rather be a Buffalo Bills fan to get there 4 times and lose, or to be a Falcons fan and just get there one time and have a disaster? I'd say to take the Falcons. How do you lose 4 Super Bowls and be emotionally stable? No way. I was affected. I'm a non-supporter of either team, and I was affected till the middle of Monday, going, I cannot believe what Atlanta did. How on earth? I'm stopping the tape, looking at Matt Ryan, going, how on earth are you going 10 yards back? Why didn't they call run? What's the philosophy? Why are people even looking at what Atlanta was able to do? And the poker philosophy was, these young cats that are super aggressive and they raise, and they just take down all these pots. But, you always see it. If you watch these poker tournaments, you got 10 million chips and the big blind is like 25,000. And you still see these guys going broke because they don't know how to shift gears. And Atlanta just wasn't able to shift gears. They had 20 million chips with the big blind being 10,000, and they still shoved all their chips in the middle when you could have just lost 1 million chips. You don't have to do that. They just needed to slow it down. But if that scenario happened and many people thought about it and talked about it, I would just say, listen, no, do not get to the Super Bowl and lose like that. Absolutely not. I couldn't take it. I wouldn't be able to function for a week or two.
So let me ask you this then.
No way.
Would you have rather been blown out 42-3?
Blown out. Either blown out or not get there at all. Yes, I would rather been blown out, because that scenario where you're so close you could have tasted it. They were right there. I mean, Atlanta is right there. They're on the cusp of it. And when you lose it like that, when you could just make a simple call, just run the football. Run. Inside handoff, draw play. You could have lost 5 yards on a run and been in field goal range. You could have done 8, 9 things differently had you just run the football.
Let me ask you this. Do you think that with as much shifting as the Falcons have already done to their coaching staff, with Kyle Shanahan leaving and losing different coaches or replacing different coaches, and there's always this attrition to rosters and the lineups where once you get as close as you've gotten to winning something like the Super Bowl, the following season, generally it just doesn't come back together for you just because you lose players to either free agency, guys retire, people's skill sets aren't what they were the year that you made it to the Super Bowl. Do you think with all that Atlanta has, they've got a quarterback who seems to have come into his own, especially this year. They've got a dual threat at running back. They've got one of the best wide receivers in all the land. They've got a decent offensive line. They've got a guy like Vic Beasley, who is a game changer on the defensive side of the ball. They've got a secondary that is, I don't want to say ball hawking, but very opportunistic and is able to get the ball and turn it over when it calls for it. Do you think that Atlanta has the wherewithal to be back in the Super Bowl either next year or the year after that with as much as they have going for them?
Do you realize how many linemen on the offense were rookies? Unbelievable to look at how young they are. I do believe they'll have a strong chance to come back because what do you need to have success? Build a defense, and Dan Quinn's defensive mind is not going to go anywhere. I know you could nitpick a little bit the philosophy of not really changing it up a little bit by playing the New England offense man-to-man the entire game and not really doing things by just saying, hey, we're going to play man-to-man, take it or leave it. But Dan Quinn is a genius mind defensively, has been to the Super Bowl now multiple times. He will learn from this because you got to remember, too.
Dan Quinn's that mind that built that Seattle defense as well, so remember that.
Exactly. I do believe the team in place and the management is fine, and you got a quarterback 30 years old, about to be 31, in Matt Ryan. You got that running game. You got Julio Jones. And look what you were able to do because you brought up younger wide receivers to do the job. So they'll be in the mix. Do they ever come back, and how affected are they confidence-wise by being that close? It might help them, and I do believe a quarterback like Matt Ryan will take it in a way that will help motivate him, take a week off and get back into the film room to realize what mistakes were made. And sometimes you have to taste the ultimate defeat to move forward. And I do believe they'll be in the mix next year. They're the odds-on betting favorite right now from the NFC. And I agree that a guy like Matt Ryan will not fall off. He'll use this as the ultimate motivation for the Falcons to come back. They were close, and look for them in the next year or two. I'll say it, they'll win a Super Bowl.
Sometimes you got to get there, and sometimes you've got to lose it so it can help motivate you so you don't ever find yourself in that spot ever again.
But I am concerned with the downgrade from Shanahan to Sarkisian. That's a downgrade.
Out of left field, too, right?
That's a downgrade. Well, it's not a left field. They were talking.
Well, they were talking. But here's the thing, right? So Steve Sarkisian decides to take the Alabama offensive coordinator position, does one game, they end up losing the national championship, and then all of a sudden he's elevated to the NFL ranks? Like, what? Like, when the news broke, I was sitting there on a bike at the gym, and I'm like, are you serious? I was like, this just, it felt like I got blindsided by it. I was like, Steve Sarkisian? I was like, really? This is the same guy who a year ago was sitting there doing keg stands at USC and getting loaded and calling out boosters at football meetings and clinics. Come on, are you serious? No. Like, speechless, dumbfounded and speechless. I was shocked. And look, Kyle Shanahan, I think, is a great mind, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Extremely gifted. I think a little bit of, like you said, a downgrade with Steve Sarkisian. I mean, unless you're promising him beers every single day, I don't know how it works out for you.
Great wrap up to the football season. I lost the bet, but I don't feel bad about it at all because it was an epic choke job. I did everything within my power to analyze it correctly. The one factor that you just can't control is the choke factor. And if you look at it in the year of 2016, a lot of chokes. Definitely go back and look. A lot of teams were not able to close. And I think there might be a market for a sports psychologist that can get in there and help the team get to the final stages and slow things down to get over the hurdle. All right, stay with us. Episode 183 will roll along. We're going to play a round of the doctors in session. I know the Jock's got a lot more in his mind in the world of sports that he needs to know and have answers to. And we'll finish out this podcast in the final segment talking about the Red Wings. If you're craving Red Wing talk and hockey talk, there's one place to check it out. That's here on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Doc here for the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Thank you for your continued support and allowing us to keep the studio lights on, the microphones hot here at the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. If you like what you're listening to, you like the variety of podcasts that you hear, definitely check out our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. That's the easiest way to support us. You get all the news from the network. You can check out the work from Vito, myself, all the guys that are putting out great content almost each and every day. And hey, if you're prone to shop online, click through that Amazon banner, go about your business, shop, and then when you're on that Amazon page, just bookmark it anytime at all that you make an online purchase. It kicks us back a little something and helps us keep this project going. We've been going strong since 2013, and that's been largely due to the support of our supporters, and we greatly appreciate it. DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Still continuing to disrespect my boy AJ Styles. You don't have him get pinned clean by Baron Corbin. Are you kidding me? Have Dean Ambrose get pinned. My gosh. But I am hoping that there is a revitalization around WrestleMania because a guy like AJ Styles with a great 5-star match will be right in the mix. But damn it, you cannot have AJ Styles pinned clean in the middle of the ring on SmackDown. Get out here with that.
I have no idea what the hell Vince McMahon is doing. AJ Styles is exceptional. He's incredible, honestly. The utter disrespect.
He's a guy worthy of a 1-year reign with the title. Just give it to him for a year. Let him carry it. But
look, I think his heel promos not so good.
No, they're not that good.
I don't think they're good at all.
What I don't like is when the crowd's into you, go with it. Don't try to fight it.
Yeah, I don't know why he did that the other night on SmackDown.
They're into
that made
you.
No sense.
Just go with it and try to get the cheap pop.
Right.
Sometimes the cheap pop is okay.
Yeah. I mean, you can sit there and feed off it. Like, I don't know. Like, so they're all chanting AJ Styles and just be like, yeah.
He's like, shut up.
I know. Like, I'd be like, yes, yell my name. That's right. I'm going to be the champion again. Like, go with it, man. Go. Move with it. Like, hey, they're into you. And I know you're supposed to be a heel and you're supposed to be hated, but you're one of the more over heels there are. Go with it. Look, people were into Steve Austin when he was a heel, right? They loved him. Absolutely loved him. And look what it did for his career. Shot him to the moon. Just go with it. His heel promos need a lot of work.
Yeah, his mic work it's just him right now. What people are reacting to is his body of work in 18 years, and the fact that in the last year we've watched a dude of his stature go out there and put on great performances, a la an HBK. Not the best talker, not the best persona, but let you be over. Just be over. Let him be over.
His babyface promos are much better than his heel promos. I think he's a little bit uncomfortable in that role. I don't know why he hasn't been able to facilitate it and kind of get into the groove, especially when he was part of the Bullet Club over in New Japan and in ROH. You would think, I mean, because Bullet Club's a heel faction and there's a whole lot of, disrespect here and there that they do. And for some reason, him solo doing the promos in WWE, it kind of misses the mark. It's AJ Styles and okay, we'll take it.
All right, I'm ready to let it rip here on the microphone and what we call the doctor is in session.
But to be the man, you gotta beat the man. And I'm saying, woo, right here, I'm the man. Woo!
First off, bro, your list of questions is getting longer every week, bro. I can't even get through the email. Like, we got 12 questions here.
I know.
There's a lot of research. You put me to work.
There's a whole lot going on here. And
damn, bro.
It's just, we've covered wrestling. The last couple weeks, we've covered a lot with hockey, and I just don't want to neglect anything. There's so much going on in and around Detroit with our sports and just basically all over the place with sports that we just got to touch on everything here. So on Monday, reports surfaced that the New Orleans Pelicans had been mulling over a potential trade for Pistons point guard Reggie Jackson. So here's your Pistons talk, all right? Would you be interested in trading away Reggie Jackson?
Here's the thing. Stan Van Gundy now is aware that people are talking about Reggie Jackson and the scenario with what the hell's going on with the Pistons. To start the year, they only won like 10 or 11 of their first 21 games with Ish Smith. So they realize, okay, it wasn't super great without him. When he comes back, you realize, oh boy, the chemistry is now off. They were making a run up until that point with Ish Smith. And now you see the Pistons and they're in flux. And the reason why is, as you can see, and from the reports and when you watch it, Reggie Jackson is just a step slow. He's not fully back and healthy from the previous injury. Now, in sports, when you lose a step, it can affect your game greatly. And my opinion was he wasn't that good before. He wasn't worthy of that contract in any sense. But now, when you're Stan Van Gundy, you also have to save face. You hitched your wagon to Reggie Jackson. So what does Stan Van Gundy say when he comes out to the media this week? We're not going to get value out of Reggie Jackson. We're not going to go out there and trade Andre Drummond for a second-round pick. We're not going to go out there and make a move not getting the value back for Reggie Jackson. But do I believe that he's been on the phone getting some inquiries about what's out there? No doubt about it. I would have made the move for Ricky Rubio. Not because Ricky Rubio's better offensively, but I think he could facilitate and run that offense better. Now, Reggie Jackson is not the guy that Stan Van Gundy should have hitched his wagon to. Unfortunately, you gave him the money. He gets the chances, unfortunately, but you need him to be better. Stan Van Gundy and the organization is hoping that this offense can become more consistent with Reggie Jackson. From my point of view, you got the wrong point guard. You made the biggest mistake. I think inevitably, if Stan Van Gundy gets fired, the single worst move that he made was hitching his wagon to Reggie Jackson. He's a volume shooter, and sometimes he doesn't make them consistently enough. Versus Minnesota, he only got like 10 points, and he looked a little bit slow. He looked like he was, not really running the offense as well as he could have been, and you need this offense to click on a much better level. So is Stan Van Gundy looking at offers for Reggie? Yeah, but you realize that people are going to try to steal him, and he's not willing to do that. He's willing to go down with the ship with Reggie Jackson. Unfortunately, it's not just going down with the ship. It's been torpedoed. This team should not be anywhere near 5 to 6 games under 500. A better coach, I think, could get more out of these guys, and there is something to the chemistry in that room. Something is off. And I don't know if it's tangible with Reggie Jackson and Stan Van Gundy or if it's among the players, but this team led by Reggie Jackson, I'm not a fan of.
And I think there's something here, too. If you ever watch in close games, Reggie Jackson kind of goes into this hero ball where he's the only one with the ball and he's the only one allowed to shoot. Doesn't distribute it, doesn't pass. So kind of touching on what you just said, you think there might be something in the room. Do you believe that he is still the leader of this team? Do you think there's some issues and some questions about his leadership with this team?
Right now, you know who the 3 leaders should be? It should be Lure, it should be Marcus Morris, and it could be Andre Drummond if he could emerge, because those guys are the guys that put the ball in the basket.
What about KCP?
KCP's been up and down defensively. He's definitely a strong leader, but I'm not exactly sure yet that he's a guy that's, taking that leadership role. Another guy that could step up if he had that quality was Tobias Harris. I say right now with this Pistons team, I keep Harris, I keep Lure, I keep Marcus Morris, and the rest I could entertain offers for. It just seems like a team that is devoid of that personality as well. Being at the Palace, it was fun. The seats are amazing. I mean, the experience is fun with the screens and the seats and the fun atmosphere, but in terms of the play on the court, it just didn't feel like you had that big name guy to kind of go to. It just seems like you have a team that's trying to go through the motion, run the set, stay out of trouble, and it's just not the best product. So for me, I would say, you know what, this group of talent, you know where you are when you see this team. This is a team that's about a 40-win team, maybe at best. Could you get more out of this team with a different coach? Maybe, because you do see efforts some nights that are really strong. But night in, night out, why can't Stan Van Gundy get the defensive side of the ball, the defensive effort, a lot better with this team? That means, are you tuning it out? Are you not willing to go balls to the wall for your coach? It's one of those things where I think this team, looking at it right now, is probably going to be deconstructed in a year or two. And I don't know if you are willing to give Stan Van Gundy another crack at it, because you made a huge mistake. Nowhere in the vicinity is Reggie Jackson, KCP, Andre Drummond worth max deals. Make some moves.
Fall and winter sports are looking kind of bleak right now in the Detroit area.
April in the D?
Yeah, not looking so good. All right, well, last week, Cleveland Cavaliers owner and Detroit native Dan Gilbert and Pistons owner Tom Gores made a pitch to the heads over at MLS for Detroit to get one of 4 soon-to-be expansion soccer teams. Now, this will be occurring over the next 3 years. It sounds like the MLS has kind of given Detroit the inside track on getting a team. It really seems like a lot of that depends, though, on whether or not the team can get a facility to play in. And a lot of that depends on whether or not the city and the city officials are willing to give Dan Gilbert and Tom Gores the land where the new jail site is to be constructed. Now, this jail site has kind of been half constructed, and then the plans were kind of left, and it's just kind of sitting there. Basically, $150 million of taxpayer money has been invested into this plot of land, and the city has just kind of left it. So Gilbert and Gores want this. They proposed a new site for a new jail and have offered to facilitate and build the new jail, sitting there and saying that they'll contribute as much as $450 million to that new jail site. So my question to you is, does Detroit get an MLS stadium and the team, or will the city stand in the way?
It's one of those things where how can you not want to partner with 2 guys that are billionaires? The MLS would be behooved to work with these guys. you realize they're both owners of professional teams. They have the funds, they have the means to attain more funds to try and put together a solid program. Now, does Detroit get it? I do believe so. Now, the situation that people are looking at is how bad did Wayne County bungle this jail situation where you got another businessman coming in and going, hey, let me offer you up a trade here, and let me give you another site here. You give me this site, and I'll go about my business going cha-ching, bada bing. You take the burden of another site and go about your business. I'm looking to make money here and build districts. And that's what these owners are trying to do. They're not just wanting to build stadiums anymore. They want to build a stadium and a whole bunch of stores to capitalize on their money. And you realize that Tom Gores and Dan Gilbert want to make a boatload of money. Can the MLS be successful in Detroit? No doubt about it. Will it be super easy? No, because you do have some factions in terms of support for the lower teams that are wondering like, hey, this big commercial entity, how are they going to come in and treat us soccer fans? Are they going to try to come in here and pilfer us and raise the prices and kind of gouge the soccer fan that are so desperate? Because there are a lot of minor league soccer teams right now in Detroit that have built up an organic fan base, and I don't see the symbiosis right now with it. Many people that are supporters of, the minor league soccer clubs are kind of looking to see, okay, what's going to happen with these two owners if they do make an MLS? And it's not like positive as much as you and I go, wow, we want to see MLS, because I'm not into minor league soccer too much. I would love to see Major League Soccer in Detroit. I would go and support it depending on the price range and if the stadium is built correctly. If you build a stadium around the neighborhood of 18 to 21,000, I think that's good. 25 might be hard to sell it out night in, night out. My opinion is this: MLS is going to come to Detroit. It just might have some snags along the way. It might not be such a quick thing to overcome and overtake because there's a lot of bureaucracy. There's a lot of situation that right now in this climate, people want to know more. They're smart like yourself. They want to kind of read into it in terms of how much money is the taxpayer going to be responsible for to cover that shitty job with the jail? How much money am I going to be responsible for in public dollars that's going to help Gores build this elaborate district? Because people don't want just to say, hey, okay, go ahead and make your billions. They want to know roughly how many jobs are you going to put back in Detroit? How many, jobs, how many opportunities are going to be created in Detroit? Because they've all given a lip service and said, hey, we hired Detroit. Then you do an investigation and you realize you didn't really hire from Detroit to do these jobs, and you're getting fined and things like that. So people want more information, and I think that's going to be most important for the success of the MLS. Gores and Dan Gilbert need to go out there and present as much information as they can as to how this soccer district, along with the Little Caesars district, is going to help Detroit. If they can do that, you favor support and you realize that, okay, if you're not using a ton of taxpayer money, it can happen. But if it's too much, if it's in the neighborhood of like, hey, we need $300 million to fund $400 million of the deal, people are going to be looking at it like, okay, man, come on, stop raping us.
Now, you've been on record numerous times saying that you want an MLS team
no doubt about it.
in Detroit.
No doubt about it.
So how much interest do you have in this? And are you, again, willing to go? Would you sit there and would you sign up for a season ticket package deal?
Season tickets, probably no, but let's say they have 20 games. I probably would go see 4 to 5.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be something fun to do. Get downtown. I mean, at this point in time, it's going to be tough. The entertainment dollars are going to be stretched thin because I'm a fan of everything. And but I would say the priority would be when wrestling events come to town, and if there's an MLS team, I would look to that first, and then I'd probably go Lions, Tigers, Wings, and Pistons.
Gotcha. Well, speaking of Tigers, ESPN's Jim Bowden recently graded out the MLB offseason and gave the Detroit Tigers a grade of F. He basically cited that the Tigers were looking...
F isn't fantastic?
No, F isn't failure. He cited the Tigers were looking to fill positions like catcher, outfield, predominantly center field, and some pitching help, and they really only brought in one Major League ready candidate, and that's Alex Avila. You remember him from such seasons as, I don't know, everything but last year. Of the dwindling available free agents on the market, who would you bring in to help this roster?
I had peeked at when we had talked about this a little bit with Vito and yourself a little bit. I thought maybe Napoli would be a great fit here, a guy that could play DH, maybe have some clutch hits because we've seen it against us for so many years. And what happens? The Rangers scoop him up and pay him a good chunk of money. Then you got a bunch of names that people are going to say, well, they're retreads like a Justin Morneau, a Doug Fister, a Joe Blanton. But I would say, okay, those guys are fine. They're major league players, but what have the Tigers done this entire offseason? A bunch of reclamation projects. I mean, hell, they're going to Japan to find a guy that pitched the last 2 years there that looks like he ate a bunch of sushi instead of pitched. But for me, I would say probably the guy that has a small chance of a rejuvenation, should you have an injury, is a guy like a Ryan Howard. Is a guy with a big bat, a left-handed bat, and should a guy like a Victor Martinez go down, maybe you could insert him as a DH. Now, what are the chances he's going to come in and have success? I mean, once he got that big money, he kind of slid off and has kind of been in obscurity. But he was the Rookie of the Year in 2005, an MVP award winner in 2006 with the Phillies. But it's just been a situation where he's been around a rebuilding team for the last now 5 years. And maybe he just needs a new scenario. But he's a guy that could help you offensively if you were to go out there and sign him. But and all the list of people that are there, I mean, if you want to look at pitching, you can go out there and maybe try to throw a bone to Jared Weaver. But I would say that right now, at this point in time, you just go like this. You say, you know what? We're dedicated, and they've done it. We're dedicated to rebuilding the minor league system. We know that we're in a situation that's not going to be really good. We're trying to go out there and fill the holes as much as we can. They're trying to go forward without saying that it's a rebuild. They just need to come out and just lay it on the table. I would be willing. I'm more frustrated now sitting here going, you're trying to bullshit me and tell me this is a good team when we all know you're not able to spend what's needed to get back to that level, and it's going to take longer for you to go out there and put a competitive team when your minor league system is so whack. If any of the starters get hurt, you got really nobody in the system. You got a lot of guys that you're almost ready to give up on, like a Moya, like a Tyler Collins. They're guys that are okay, but if they were gone, I wouldn't miss them. So just come out here, lay it on me. This is a rebuild. We're going to blow this thing up, and maybe at this point in time, I'm kind of hoping that they do have a bad season so they can start shipping off these pieces to start the process of a full rebuild. But of the list that I kind of was reading, Ryan Howard probably would be the top choice, but only in the case of an injury. So when you look at it, it's not too flattering. It's not too great. It's just, I agree with the F grade. It's just not good. And you saw the report that came out from MLive that they got them winning about 77 games. You have a report from USA Today that has them in the 85 win range, but that's probably the fairest way to look at it.
It's going to be a tough season.
77 to 85 wins at this point in time. That's if they're healthy. And with older guys, and you saw that Vmar was playing with a groin injury, you know, Miguel Cabrera is always dealing with a nick in his ankle here and there. You just look like, with Brad Ausmus as the manager in that same bullpen, pew.
Here's the one interesting thing you can say about the Tigers as we head into spring training. Their starting rotation, I expect it to be better than it was last year. That being said, I expect it to be a little bit healthier. I expect guys to take step forwards. But that bullpen has gotten worse. And again, you're putting another year on a lot of your older veterans. And generally, as they get older and as they age, they don't get better. They don't get any faster, and they don't heal as quickly. So it's really a mixed bag. And you're right. Just come out and say you're going to blow it up and then start trading off pieces and get some stuff in here to sit there and infuse new life and new talent into the organization. Don't just sit there and kind of sit on your hands. And that's really what they did this offseason. It was kind of, hey, we really want to trade a lot of guys away because we want to cut salary. So, you know, make us an offer. And then the phones really didn't ring, or they weren't getting what they were looking for. So they just sat on their hands. And now you don't have a center fielder, or there's nobody who projects to be your center fielder going into the season. So this is going to be super interesting to see how Al Avila handles all of this going forward.
Great segment, bro. Great questions. I liked them all. And it's one of those things where I enjoy talking about a lot of different things. So you could even add more to the list if you want to throw in wrestling, you want to throw in reality TV, you want to throw in politics. I challenge you, man. If you want to add 10 questions a week, I'll deliver. You know that, for an egomaniacal podcasting psychologist. Bring it on, brother. That was good.
Sounds good, man. I'll start going outside the realm of sports here, and I'll start incorporating more for you.
Yes,
but great job. Great job.
Yes, sir. Let's take our final time out. I'm ready to pick your brain because I know that we have a lot to talk about with these Red Wings. Stay with us. Episode 183. Our final segment's next, talking about the team that plays at the Joe Louis Arena. Stay with us.
Doc and Jock here for Fanatic U. If you're looking for some sweet sports swag and you love your Detroit teams, and I mean you really love your Detroit teams, you got to check out fanaticu.com and get the coolest gear out there and rock your Red Wing shirt, rock your Lions shirt, rock your Piston apparel. Wear it till the wheels fall off. Michigan State, you know what? They got it too. Check out Fanatic U. They have 6 locations all over Metro Detroit. Check them out, fanaticu.com.
Yeah, we coming now. Come on. Yeah, that's right. We put it down. It's like a family in here, just a little disabled. Putting it down, we lay them out on the table. Yeah. Who's in the house? The brothers in the house. Gotta turn it on out, let you know what we about. Kinda like Cain and Abel, a bit unstable. Don't be breaking the brain, break the whole damn table.
Thanks, everybody, for your continued support. Welcome back. I appreciate everybody that's been downloading our podcast, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Click through the Amazon banner. Do your online shopping, but just stop at DetroitSportsPodcast.com first. And we're going to continue to provide great coverage during the Horizon League tournament. The Metro Series is going to take place on Friday. Look for great coverage from Vito, the Doc, Adam coming up here in the next couple weeks for some big games for Oakland University and the Detroit Mercy Titans basketball squads. All right, cuz the Red Wings definitely made some news. Man, it was nice to see them compete a little bit more in the last couple games. The game versus Columbus was the ultimate disappointment because the fans that threw beer on the ice after the game were well justified because they got screwed. Zetterberg's stick got shattered, and I don't know how that was a no call, but
It was a second slash in 15 seconds.
But the Red Wings have been able to compete versus the likes of Columbus. They're scoring more. They look like a team that's playing a little bit better. But in essence, what we see is it's a team that really just isn't good enough talent-wise. And you could argue that there are some challenges now with upper management, with coaching, with the special teams. So there's a lot to dig into. But I know the first thing that pissed you off was, and it sent you into a tailspin, was the release and the waiving of Alexei Marchenko. And obviously, you had strong opinions about it, but he was subsequently picked up by the Toronto Maple Leafs, reuniting with his former coach, Mike Babcock.
Yeah, I just didn't understand it. I thought it was incredibly short-sighted and stupid of Ken Holland. I mean, here you've got a young, talented kid, a guy who filled in so nicely last year, has been doing some spot duty this year as they've been revolving their defense, basically carrying 9 guys for most of the season because guys can't stay healthy and Cronwall needs a day off every other day. But this is a kid who's played 30 games this year. He's contributed with 6 assists, and he's a +6. On top of that, he's incredibly cheap. He only cost you $1.3 million, and he excels every time you give him ice time. The more and more time you give him, the more and more production you see out of him. Instead, you sit there and you waive a guy like this. Why? For what?
Isn't there a logjam at defense right now?
Well, there is, but again, you can sit there and you can find different ways to sit there and adjust your roster. You could get rid of a guy like Eriksson, who's probably been your worst defenseman all season long. You can sit there and you can waive him. See if anybody bites on that. See if anybody picks him up. Now, in 49 games, he's got a goal and he's got 8 assists, so he's got 9 points, but he's a -3. Every time he's out there, he is usually the cause for either a turnover in the own zone or a goal being scored. On top of it, he cost you $4.25 million. So, I mean, we talk about the salary cap and how much of an issue it is for this Red Wings team and trying to get over that and looking to bring in some new talent or looking to do something with the cap structure. And here's a guy who is super cheap and excels every time he's on the ice. Instead, you're going to send him off to obscurity. You're going to send him to Toronto because Toronto picks him up off waivers. Instead, you're going to keep a guy like Eriksson, or how about even a guy like Cronwall, who's played just as many games as Marchenko, has less points, and is a -2. Unbelievable. Cronwall's a complete disaster out there. He's been a disaster for over a year and a half now, and he cost you $5.5 million a season.
So if you were talking to Kenny Holland, what would he tell you is the reason why Eriksson is still on the squad despite gaudy numbers and then people feel like they don't want him here?
Because veterans get the nod. That's the way this team has been built. If you look at all the old players on this team, it's surrounded by old guys with really young, talented guys. And it's just veterans get the nod. It's one of those things that Ken Holland and Mike Babcock did, and it really hurt this team going forward, and you're seeing it now. Now they're paying for it, where you've got young, talented guys coming up, and they're trying to fight their way into the roster, and there's just spots that are taken up by aged veterans. We've talked about this when we sat there and we previewed the Red Wings season. We sat there and we said, hey, look, if we're going to struggle, we're going to lose, it's going to be a tough season, let's do it with the young kids. Let's lose early, let's sit there and let's go through the growing pains now. Don't sit there and don't bog this down by getting guys like a Thomas Vanek. Yeah, Thomas Vanek came in and he's played pretty well, But Thomas Vanek's almost 100 years old. You know, I mean, Hendrik Zetterberg, yeah, he looks pretty decent right now. He looks like he kind of bathes in a little bit of fountain in youth, but how long until that runs out? As we creep closer to the playoffs, watch when his back starts to go. Watch when his knees start to go. And it just, he can't continue to basically play 22 minutes a game. He's not built for it anymore. He's like almost 40. You need the young kids to come in. You need that infusion of talent. And when you sit there and you get rid of a guy like an Alexei Marchenko, it just strikes me as extremely short-sighted. And it just seems like Ken Holland, again, out of touch with how to sit there and navigate the new NHL. I mean, Ericsson's not a fast guy. Cronwell's got no legs left. All right, so you got a guy like Marchenko who can carry the puck up and who can shoot and is smart. And every time, like I said, every time you give him a little bit of ice time, he excels and he's talented and he does the job. On top of that, he's 3 times cheaper than either Eriksson or Cronwell, and nobody's going to pick those guys up. So why the hell would you sit there and not waive them? You could send them down to your minor leagues if you wanted to make room. Again, short-sighted on Ken Holland's part.
Did the play of late in the last couple weeks kind of give you renewed hope that maybe they could make the postseason? I mean, they're getting points. Unfortunately, they struggle in overtime. They're able to get that 1 point, but getting that second point in overtime seems to be a struggle. They do seem to be playing a little bit better as of late, offensively and special teams. It just doesn't seem like they're able to go on that long run to get like 7 of 10 games to get the full 2 points. Does it give you confidence in the next month or so that they could maybe make a stretch, or are you just kind of feeling like, you know what, it is what it is, and we're just waiting a slow death for this Red Wing season?
Right now, it's such a logjam up at the top for that final playoff spot. They're in contention for it. I mean, 5 points out, roughly. There's an outside chance that they could sit there and they can make the playoffs. And like we've talked about before, you make the playoffs, you got a shot. That being said, I don't think they're going to do it. I think they're going to falter down the stretch. This has been a nice little revitalization. You've kind of seen Mrazek come back around. Looks like he's playing a little bit better. I still think he has trouble tracking the puck. I was at the game against the Islanders on Friday night, and just watching him, he looked uncomfortable. It looked like he was having trouble seeing the puck, and then when the puck would sit there and come off the stick, he would have trouble following it, and that's kind of been his big bugaboo. If you watch the way he plays early in the first period or so, the first couple shots, if you watch how he handles it, you kind of know how the game's going to go. If he looks like he's struggling or he's fighting the puck a little bit, it's going to be a long night. If he's sitting there and he's in good position, he's able to make the save, he's able to sit there and control the rebound, he has usually a good shot to sit there and come away with a shutout like they did against the Predators the other night. But it doesn't necessarily give me renewed hope. It just, again, I think it prolongs the inevitable at this point.
So explain this to me now with this upcoming draft that they have to kind of only protect one goaltender that they're allowed to. So in essence, you kind of think that the Red Wings are going to protect Mrazek and they're going to expose Howard and Careau to this expansion draft. So are we looking at a situation where we have to have a debate, or is it Mrazek's the guy and you just hope that they take Howard? Or in essence, do you realize that maybe, just maybe a small chance, do you look at Careau and feature him a little bit more to see if you protect him? Because I know it's a debate, but many people I don't think are taking it seriously. I think many people just want Mrazek to be the guy because he's got the higher upside. But Careau is a big goaltender that if you feature has some talent.
Yeah, see, as far as the goaltending goes, it'll be interesting to see how they handle this. Jimmy Howard has, before his injury, was having one of his best seasons he's ever had. Peter Mrazek has struggled, basically given the job and didn't know what to do with it. And then you bring Jared Careau up, and he looked like the second coming of Christ as a goaltender. You know, I mean, it was like Terry Sawchuk just reinvented. So a lot of talent as far as goaltending goes, or a lot of potential, we should say, as far as goaltending goes. It'll be interesting to see whether or not they sit there and they protect Mrazek, leaving the other two guys open to be picked up for the expansion draft. I don't think Howard will be protected just because of the contract. This is one way to sit there and unload that heavy contract. As far as Careau goes, I think if he has any options left and they can send him down in order to protect themselves and protect him, they will send him back down to Grand Rapids. If he can get through waivers and he doesn't have to go through waivers, that's where he'll go. And then it's basically you're protecting Mrazek, and he's your future for this team. The big frustrating thing with Peter is given the job and not able to really sit there and take it by the reins and control it. You know, very up and down. He's been up and down ever since he's been brought up to the NHL. He plays great in long stretches, and then he plays horrible in long stretches, and you're just kind of left scratching your head. Is it just, his attention span? Is he just not doing certain things right during the game? Is it just positioning? What is it? It's always something, and it's hard to really nail down what the big issue is. Kind of where I don't know if this now falls onto, Jeff Blashill, where he's got to be like, look, you got to figure it out. Otherwise, we're going to do something else. Maybe kind of put down an ultimatum for him to make him kind of step up to the plate. And it'll be interesting, again, with the expansion draft to see kind of what happens and how this team is able to kind of restructure the deck a little bit. It's almost like getting a get-out-of-jail-free card because you only have to protect so many guys, right? And you don't even have to protect so many guys. So you can leave a bunch of guys who have huge contracts wide open. And if Las Vegas wants to take them, see you later. And at that point, you get your salary cap relief. And that's what this team needs right now, salary cap relief, and they need an infusion of young talent.
So now a couple situations have occurred when you look at the news surrounding the NHL. A couple coaches have lost their job. Ken Hitchcock and Claude Julien. Hitchcock from the Blues, Claude Julien from the Boston Bruins. They were scuffling, and they decided to pull the trigger. Ken Hitchcock has kind of been on his last legs, hasn't won a cup in a long time. Claude Julien has won a cup recently, but when any coach gets fired, you start looking at, okay, could any of these two guys be an improvement over Jeff Blashill? Me personally, I would look at a Claude Julien as a guy that could come in here and maybe get more out of these guys. But it's one of those situations where you look at it and you go, this organization has faith in Jeff Blashill, and it doesn't look like Kenny Holland or the organization is laying any blame on the season on Jeff Blashill. They're looking at it like, you know what? We got a young coach. We're willing to learn with him. We're willing to see what he can do. And they're really accepting of the fact that, hey, when you're in an organization and you realize, hey, I got support of management, despite whatever they're telling you, you kind of feel like, well, you know what? Maybe we can keep Jeff Blashill if I know I'm going to have job security. See, if my seat was on fire and I'm Ken Holland, I don't think he feels like his seat's on fire at all. When he goes on the radio stations and tells everybody, here's a history lesson, here's what I've done, here's what I think I'm capable of, and you don't get a sense that there's urgency. Because in essence, when you hear Kenny Holland, he predicted this season with no ill regard at all. He said, expecting a Stanley Cup, why would you expect that? We're going to pretty much struggle, or it's going to be hard to get to the postseason. So in essence, I don't feel like he feels like his ass is on fire or that his seat's super hot. He feels like, you know what? I have supportive management. I can rest upon my 4 Stanley Cups, and I could say, you know what? We can rebuild now and try our process of what it looks like to actually rebuild. So I don't see the Red Wings going out there and blowing out Jeff Blashill at this point in the season because they do compete, and the talent's not there. They realize it's their fault. So a Ken Hitchcock and a Claude Julien, if they came here, probably would get you a couple games and, a spark. But in the long haul, I think they're going with Blashill.
Yeah, if I had to pick between either Claude Julien, Ken Hitchcock, or Jeff Blashill, I'm leaning towards Claude Julien all day long. Look, Claude Julien's a great coach. He's a guy who I think you could bring in, especially give him some young talent. He can really sit there and coach him up. The issue that I'm seeing with this Red Wings team and this organization is Ken Holland and Jeff Blashill, I think, are connected at the hip. So if one's going to go, the other's going to go as well. So it might just be a matter of time of just kind of playing this season out, maybe sitting there looking at what happens next season, and then they both probably will be gone because at this point, I don't think Ken Holland should be making decisions anymore. Hasn't proved to me in quite some time that he has a full grasp of what's going on either in and around the NHL or with this team. When you come out and you tell your fans not to expect to win Stanley Cups, there's a huge issue there. There's a monster issue. Like, I get it that you want to be realistic and you want to keep the fans' expectations in check. I understand that. But your job, the one thing you're supposed to do is you're supposed to facilitate and put together the best team possible that is in contention to win a Stanley Cup, to win the ultimate prize in hockey. And when you come out and you say, hey, don't expect that. I don't know what you guys are looking at, but we don't have that kind of talent. Well, whose fault is that? Aren't you the guy who does all the drafting? Aren't you the guy who signs all the contracts? Aren't you the guy who sits there and basically puts together the roster for the head coach? And now Jeff Blashill, I think Jeff Blashill could be a really good head coach. I think he really could. I think he understands the game of hockey. I think he understands his players, and I think he understands what buttons to push. But I think he's limited and he's hamstrung because he's got a general manager like Ken Holland who sits there and is like, well, look, you got to do it with these guys. And I'm sure they have conversations every single day. And he's like, look, I need this, I need that, and I need this. And I'm sure Kenny turns and looks at him and is like, well, good luck with that. I'll let you know what we can do. Probably not going to be a whole lot of anything. By the way, you know that free agent signing with Thomas Vanek, you know, the guy who sits there and pretty good in the shootout and scores quite a few points for you? Yeah, we're probably going to be trading him away. So, you know, roster's going to be getting a lot worse. And, yeah, FYI, sorry about losing Alexei Marchenko for you because, yeah, I just didn't think anybody would pick him up. I don't know why. I mean, you know, he's +6, young, cheap, talented defenseman. You can get by with a guy like Cronwell, who's old and his hips are falling apart, and he costs a ton of money, as well as Eriksson, who seems to basically put the puck in our own net. So good luck with all that, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. And I'm sure Jeff Blashill, just when he leaves, he's just MFing up one way, down the other, and just like, what am I going to do with this team? That being said, I think if you bring another general manager in here, and I don't have any names for you right now, but if I'm Chris Ilitch or I'm Mike Ilitch, I've got a list of guys that I'm looking at or that I'm talking to. Even if it's a guy like a Chris Draper, you know, who's an assistant to the general manager, or even if it's the assistant general manager for the Detroit Red Wings, I'm having conversations with these guys. I'm picking their brain. I'm trying to figure out what they're seeing and what they're thinking we can do to sit there and make this a much better hockey organization than what it is right now. And whether that means bringing in a guy like a Claude Julien, or whether that means trading away some talent, or whether that means sitting there and looking at something in the draft. I'm sitting there exploring all options because this is abominable. This has been an awful season for the Detroit Red Wings. And as Red Wing fans, the thing, you know what's funny? I have buddies of mine who are huge hockey fans. They don't remember what it was like when the Red Wings didn't win playoffs or when they didn't make playoffs. They've lived their entire lives knowing only good Red Wing teams. I remember the Dead Wings. I remember them being awful. I remember them getting their butts handed to them by Chicago all the time. I remember them getting their butts handed to them by the Minnesota North Stars. I remember them playing Toronto and Toronto wiping the floor with them. I remember these games. They were bad. No two ways about it. They were bad. But you know what? They've had a very impressive record for a very long time, and all good things must come to an end. All right? This looks like it's going to end fiery. It's gonna burn to the ground, and it's gonna be awful. The thing is, you got to sit there, burn it to the ground, do it quick, make it as painless as possible, and then you start the rebuild. With no guarantees that you'll ever be as good as you once were, but you have to start the rebuild at some point. They've tried to rebuild on the fly for so very long, and it just isn't working. So burn the damn thing to the ground and start from scratch. If that means getting a brand new coach in here with a brand new thought process and just a way of doing things, go out there, get Claude Julien. I think he's a great coach. Everywhere he's gone, he's won. Just recently won Stanley Cups. He's played for 2 in the last 10 years. Go get him.
Very well said. I understand a lot of Red Wing fans are really kind of teetering on support versus a revolt here. It's one of those tough things, and we'll talk about it more and more in upcoming podcasts, really looking at, now that football's done, really what these Red Wings are capable of. It's been a better watch the last couple of weeks, but you definitely see that they could definitely use a lot of younger talent, more talent on defense, maybe a little bit of an upgrade at goaltending and at the head coaching position. But there are a couple of things that maybe we have to peek at as to say who are the building blocks of this team, and we'll definitely peek at it on future episodes of the Doc and Jock podcast. Great job, cuz we literally turn on the mics, 95 minutes go by, and we still feel like we could talk for another 4 hours about 100 other things, but I enjoy it. It's the best part of the week. Definitely check it out every Thursday, DetroitSportsPodcast.com, Doc and Jock. For the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Thank you very much for tuning in. And if you like it, just tell one other person. We greatly appreciate it. See y'all.
Go Wings.
This was locker room talk.
Second dick.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I hear voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me.